everyone. Sat Sri Akal Ji, hello and welcome everyone. This is a particularly auspicious time that we're in. And so that's what we're going to discuss today. This moment, it's a 4-day window. It's called the Lionsgate Portal. And it's a convergence. It's always a convergence between numerology, which is more to do with destiny, a deliberate, willful movement in a direction, and fate, the forces that we are negotiating in the sea of time. So, what makes this particular day or this particular period special is the 888 convergence, that there's actually 3 different eights which add up to a 4th 8. So this is very unusual that we would have a convergence with these 4 8s, and I'll quickly describe that. That the day of the month is in relationship to income or energy or need. It's what's required on a day-to-day basis. The month relates to karma, and karma doesn't exist outside of ourself. This is a gross misunderstanding. Karma is something that we carry with us, and we carry it with us through what we're attached to. So we carry karma into the world through us, as opposed to it coming from the world to us. It's what you cling to and what you grasp at, because we tend to see what we look for. There's a net called the reticular activating system, or the reticular formation, and it's like a neural network at the back of the brain where we literally filter out anything. The brain filters out any information that it doesn't see as being relevant to supporting one's identity. And in fact, we all go through life seeing only a tiny fraction of what's actually out there. The information comes in through the sensations, through the auditory sensations, the visual sensations, and the tangible sensations, but we never are aware of it because it's filtered out before it ever comes to our consciousness. We can talk about that another time, but what I'm saying is absolutely the case. And what neuroscientists have discovered is actually we are not designed, the human organism, in fact, any organism on the planet is not designed to know the truth. It's designed to know just enough information to survive and thrive. And what we mean by thrive is to expand, become more of itself, and then mature enough to procreate, to create extensions of itself, new organisms or offspring. And in a similar way, we could say if we knew all our karma, as in if we could see ultimate reality, if we saw everything is out there, it would probably kill us. The amount of information would make us dysfunctional. And they've done research on this where running models to see what is more successful, organisms that know everything, know the truth of what's there, or organisms that filter their information specifically for reproduction, existence and reproduction. And hands down, the the organisms that knew everything all died out, went extinct rather quickly. So this isn't just a hypothetical, this is a scientifically verified aspect of all life, and particularly humans. So,
Wow.
yeah, so this is understanding then the nature of karma is to look at the past, filter out the information that the organism, our sense of self, sees as useful because I'm still here because of the identity I created. And these are the specifications of what my identity is. And then we literally just throw out anything that's contrary to the identity we create. And this is as true of a tree or a field mouse or a human being. We just take the information that we're looking for something called confirmation bias. We're looking for information that supports our identity that we've created because we believe that's how we'll continue to survive. So we're looking for objects that are useful, and we're looking for objectives that are worth pursuing. So we look at the field, we draw a line around something like an outline and lift that thing off the field. It now becomes a figure. And we ask ourselves, and this is happening faster than we can imagine, we ask ourselves, is this useful to me? And if it's not, we just put it back on the field and let go of it. Is it dangerous to me? And it's obviously useful to know a danger. So that's a kind of a negative interpretation. But if it's useful in the sense of knowing that thing might kill me, well, then that is useful. And then we place our attention towards that thing, whether it's useful for our growth, for our survival, mostly about eating. Our attention is number one drawn towards consuming some kind of food and avoiding some kind of predator or poison. And that's partly the reason that the human spectrum, what we perceive more shades of green than any other color. And that's because the various shades of green indicate different plants. And we tell what's poisonous and not poisonous by both the shape of the leaf, by the smell it emits, and of course by the color. Um, so this predisposition towards confirmation bias is existing all the time, and we're almost completely unaware of it. And the important thing to remember, I don't want to go too far off on this, is none of us see what's out there, so we also don't see who is out there, right? We live in a dark room where we're taking constant pictures and then developing them inside the mind, inside the brain. So it's like we're in a dark room, we take a picture, or we take an audible recording, or we take a tangible sensory input, we bring it inside the skull in this dark room that never sees the light, and we take that information, which has been turned into electromagnetic signals, and we recreate an approximation, a projection of what we think's out there. It's a rendering. So I just want to bring you to this awareness that none of you have ever met anyone else. This is where the Buddhist concept of everything in the world is just a reflection of yourself. Everyone you have ever met, you've met a rendering that you inside your skull in that cold, dark, black place, cold, dark, wet, black place, you've rendered a reduction, approximation of everyone you've met. And you've taken the useful information, what you've defined as useful information, to create that rendering. But also be aware no one has ever met you because they're also in this, we could call it a gravity well of consciousness, that they've also have a rendering of you based on what they've perceived as useful information. The reason I want to point this out is you're never communicating with anyone unless you can wake from this dwam. Most of us aren't arguing with someone else. We're arguing with a rendering of someone else that's inside of us. And they're arguing with a rendering of us that's inside of them. And the real paradox is being aware that that rendering that's being created, you're caught inside that same matrix, that you've rendered a concept of yourself, which filters out all kinds of information which you don't perceive as useful. You have a picture of yourself, an identity of yourself, which you believe because you've survived, it is all that's important. And so when somebody presents information that challenges your rendering of yourself, your rendering will argue with their rendering. You're wanting to present the best, most useful public relations version of yourself all the time. And you will defend that identity to the death because losing that identity feels like a death. I hope that's making some sense. And it's why some of our arguments can become so ferocious, so vitriolic, because we're not talking about the incident that's just happened right now. We're relating to projections that we're defending. And those projections that we're defending could go back as far as early childhood, 3.5 to the end of your 7th year. You created identity, and then that is who you have falsely come to hallucinate is as you. But you're an infinite possibility engaged in this limited, ephemeral experience. I hope that's making some sense.
Little bit.
Well, okay, I'll go into this last bit really quickly so you understand it. I don't know how many of you have seen the Matrix films or any of the Matrix films, but
Yes,
the
I've
way
seen.
that right, so the way they shot those films is they created a ramp that a movie camera could dolly up, but they also perched 72 different still cameras on that ramp, and it's a spiral ramp. So it's a ramp that's going up and spinning around an empty space in the center where the actors would perform live action movement while they were suspended on strings. So they would be like doing the flying tricks that they used to do in the theater, or sometimes we've seen in particularly uh, Chinese films over the last few decades. So they would take 72 pictures in fast order, but one after the other. Click, 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 click. And they would have 72 static images that were looking at the same motion from splits, fractions of a second apart. And then the CGI, the computer um, generated images, would fill in the gaps. Well, that's actually how we see. We don't see motion because the optical nerve can't send and receive an image at the same time. So, what the optical nerve does is it sees and takes a still picture, like a normal camera, not a cinema film camera, not a movie camera, but a normal still camera. It takes one image and then it sends that image to the brain as an electromagnetic signal. And then it comes live again, takes another still picture, transmits that information as a still picture along the optic nerve to the optical center at the back of the brain. And then when it's sent, it takes another. So, what the brain is actually receiving is a series of still images, but you don't
Oh,
see that.
I got
You
it. I
see,
got it. Yeah.
right, as an optical movement.
Yeah.
Well, that's the case with everything. Moving is a hallucination. So what you see isn't what's there. And part of the way the brain does that is it takes old information, looks for a pattern that it can recognize, and then predicts the future. That's how in baseball or cricket, even more so, uh, the cricket batter can manage to knock a ball for six, to hit a ball out of the park when it's coming at 90 miles an hour, because the eye isn't looking at the ball. The eye is looking, taking information in, and then another aspect of the eye is predicting where the ball is going to be. And the batter doesn't swing at where the ball is. The batter swings at where the ball will be by the time his bat has reached the area of space that the ball is going to travel through. Is that making some sense?
A lot of sense now. Thanks for
Right.
that. Yeah.
Yep. So we have to understand that that is reality. We are completely not looking in the present moment. We are looking at the past, looking for a pattern of recognition that we then impose on the present. We look at the present moment, we draw while we're stopping to perceive the present, looking, referencing the past, and then projecting that onto the present moment in order to predict what's going to happen next. Because that's the biggest driving force in all of nature, but in particularly within the human mind, is what happens next. I need to know what's going to happen next. And in fact, we could say that is the human ego. Ego, the initials could be edging God out. God is the generating, organizing, and delivering principles of creation. but they only are ever happening now in the present moment, which is also the present moment, right? But the human mind is constantly referencing back into the past in order to project into the future. It's anticipation. And this is why we say in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God, because we look at the present moment and then we recall. Yes, that's a activation of the human voice, the word. We recall the past. We quickly reassemble the past from drawing on our past experience, and then from that we predict, as in diction, the future. The human mind, the human ego, is like a parasite on ultimate truth, on what we're actually experiencing. And it's doing that by editing what it sees as important. So there's a very famous experiment that was done where people are all watching a basketball game, and they're asked to pay attention to the game and who scores. So they watch this 3-minute film, intently watching the players and where the ball is going, who's passing the ball to who and who's shooting. And then at the end, they're asked about when they first noticed the gorilla. And virtually without exception, the response is, "What gorilla?" And then they play back the film again, and there is obviously a man on the opposite side of the court in the stands, about the same place the watcher is. So it's at their eye level, but they're looking down at the court, not at their eye level. But in plain view, um, a human being dressed up in a gorilla suit walks from off screen into the middle of the screen, standing up, and then looks directly at the camera and waves like jumping jacks. Waves, here I am, and then walks off to the other side of the screen out of view. When people know there's a gorilla to look for, they all see it. But that wasn't important information when they were asked to look who scores and how many baskets are scored during the film clip that they're looking at. The mind is actively taking in information and then editing it, curating it for presentation to you who is trapped inside the skull. This is very important because it relates to the information I'm going to talk about.
Can I
So,
just add something?
yes,
It's
please.
very interesting. When the Spaniards first came to South America, apparently they couldn't see the ships.
Yes, because they had never seen a ship. Absolutely. So they couldn't see them because it wasn't information that their brain could relate to. So it just dismissed it. Not, I no good to my reality, and just literally dismissed it. You're absolutely right. And then on that point, there's another thing to that is the conquistadors were bearded and strongly bearded, and the Native Americans from Central America, where they first landed, uh, didn't have beards. So it was odd for them to see a man with a beard. And they had never seen horses because they didn't have horses in the Americas. So they looked and saw these beings, men on horses, and they could only perceive it as one animal. It was akin to what as akin to what the Greeks described as the centaurs, which were
Oh,
like animals with four legs and then a torso and head and two arms. So this begs the question: is that mythology that the Greeks had, did that develop out of the first human encounter of another culture that had horses, because they would have come up probably from a more plains culture than a Mediterranean on the sea culture? And maybe the first of the Greeks, when they encountered human beings riding on horseback, also thought they were one being, right? And in fact, the the Mapuche in Chile were the first really strong civilization or culture, shall we say, to rebel against the conquistadors, because their chief or head figure had been captured, and he saw that the men get off the horses. Before, nobody, unless they were captured, had seen the conquistadors not on their horses. Whenever they were in battle, they were fighting with them on horses, and that gave him a great advantage. So when he witnessed the men getting on and off the horses, he realized that they weren't one being. So when he managed to get free, he taught all of his people, hey, this advantage, they're not this beast, they're just men on an animal that's a little bit like a llama. And that
okay.
made it able for them to adopt a different strategy of, first thing you want to do is get the men off their horse, right? Don't try to fight the man horse. Get the man off the horse. And then he's wearing this armor, which puts him at a weighted disadvantage. And he doesn't have the horse. He might even get injured falling off the horse. But at least you're now fighting on a level playing ground. And that was a very successful tactic. And that's probably because the Mapuches had already been successful of fighting an imperial force of the Incas. The Incas never managed to conquer the Mapuche, the Inca Empire. So it's very important to recognize you are creating your reality. And everyone you're dealing with is creating their own reality. So they're not seeing you and you're not seeing them. Nothing of what you see is actually what's there. You're witnessing or experiencing a curated reality. And this is perhaps the most powerful knowledge in all human wisdom. Because if you're creating your reality, it means you're including in your reality the things that you've looked for. So there are all kinds of opportunities to thrive, not just survive, but thrive, that you are completely unaware of unless you've been trained in your upbringing or your more adult experience. There is an opportunity for me to improve my experience, my standard of living. Is that making sense?
A lot of sense. It's similar, like, some can see the auras, some see a lot more, they smell a lot more, taste a lot.
Exactly. Well,
Mm.
yeah, dogs smell about 700 times what a human being smells. Cats, maybe they have the eyes that they have because they do see things we don't see. The Sumerian cuneiform texts, ancient ones, indicate that they could see interdimensional beings crawling in from the corners of our experience. Now, I know that sounds a bit mad, but the ancient texts from 5,000 years ago say that that's the case. So we don't know what we see And that means we certainly don't know what other species see. And then this is the last thing on that count. Plants, obviously, to our understanding, don't have eyes, so they can't see. But they all know to climb to the light. A tree will actually grow sideways if there's something in its way that keeps it in shadow. And a tree will actually bend to get out of a shadow. So it must perceive light. That's what it's looking for. It's looking for light that it can perform photosynthesis. But it goes beyond that. And we know that from the plants that, like ivy, the climbing plants, because ivy and such and other clinging plants, they will change their leaf shape. They will adopt the same shape leaf as the plant or tree they're climbing up. That's
Wow.
one, camouflaging them and keeping them hidden within that tree's own structure and foliage. So it's thought to be part of the tree. How? How on earth do they get that information? Well, probably from the same way that the tree gets the information on how to grow its leaf. And this is a whole area of science that has come about in the last 20, say 25, 30 years, which, and really strongly in the last 5 or 10 years, which means biologists like Richard Dworkin, they can't sustain their argument of the concept of the selfish gene, because what this new information indicates that plants and maybe all life grows transformation guided by form, guided by a form field, that plants and animals don't grow based on historical information in the plant that already exists. It grows because there's a field projected that the plant is growing into. And they've noticed this with like salamanders who have their arm, an appendage maybe is cut off. In certain photography, I think it's called Crowleyan photography, they can still see the image of the ligament. The whole arm is there with the feet, although there's no arm. And eventually, if the cell structure of the animal is simple enough, the animal grows back the limb. It grows into the field form, energetic field form that's photographable. It replaces itself. Well, this is the subject of this 888 portal. The awareness that human beings have a more advanced version of this form field, that we're not limited to the form field of our species biology, right? We don't have a glass ceiling. Like an oak tree is only ever going to be an oak tree unless we graft something onto it, from a different tree. But if it's grown from itself, it will. An acorn will become an oak. An apple tree, an apple seed will become an apple tree. In every size, in every apple, there's 10 seeds. So an apple seed becomes an apple tree, and an apple itself could become an apple orchard. That's a genuine possibility. So the difference is a human being can become an unlimited spectrum of possibilities. Is that making sense?
That means if you want to transform even as a lion, tiger, you can actually do that, right?
Yes. Yes. And and so the reason Sikhs are called Sikhs, it's interesting because the word Sikh in India relates to a tiger, the king of the jungle. But it's mostly translated now as lion, which is really the king of the savannah. And the reasons it's translated more often now as lion, obviously a lot of Sikhs went to Africa mainly because of the expansion of the British Empire and the railroads. The Sikhs were great craftsmen, workers, and they traveled with the railroads. So the other reason for adopting the lion rather than the tiger, I think the Nihang Sikhs still point back to the tiger aspect. But the lion aspect is, why is the lion the king of the jungle? It's not the biggest, it's not the strongest, it's not the fastest. It's because the lion, the male lion, doesn't do anything. It just sits and
Amazing.
holds the space. The pride revolves around the alpha masculine, and then the whole savannah revolves around the lion pride. So there's even in this words, recognize that the pride is not the individual. The pride is something that revolves around the core. And we could relate this back in spiritual terms of, you are not the ego. And because you're not the ego, you are not the pride you might have in yourself. Who you are really is the central core, your core being, which is just the watcher, the observer. If you can hold the space and observe, and then consciously curate your space, not allow the ego persona, mind body construct, persona mask, which is persona means voice, sound, the voice and the visual mask that we put on to masquerade as this curated rendering of what we want people to think of ourselves. If we can do that and step back into who we really are, we become a karmaless being. We're not attached to the past, so we don't have an identity that's curated. We're not attached to the future, so we're not attempting to maintain or influence a public relations version of how we want people to see us. We're just dealing with the present moment and what is. This is the very description they talk about what we might call the enlightened beings. This is everything the Buddha taught, but everything from all the spiritual traditions, even if they didn't use the words enlightenment, the idea of self-realization, to know oneself, is to know this true core being, which is just a localized perspective that is still part of the whole, like the ocean rises into a wave, crests, and falls back into the ocean. It's a wave. It's almost like a triangular structure that has a a beginning, a middle peak, and then a resolution back into the whole. But it never stops being a part of the ocean. It's just a momentary pattern of behavior. In theater, we call it the inciting incident, the crisis, and the resolution. And notice the word, the central word, the crisis, right? Crisis is almost like Christ is. This matrix, this crystalline form of consciousness is loosely part of everything, non-specific, non-localized, and then the attention becomes focused on something. This is the Christ-like awareness. There is something. I will sacrifice my limitlessness. We could say, I will sacrifice my immortality and my omnipotence, my potency, eternal, infinite potency, and my omniscience, my infinite knowledge, and I will step into a particular point of view, focusing on specific, particular information in order to act in the world. This is the nature of human existence, is to become Christ-like, that we make the sacrifice of our immortality or our limitlessness to have a limited experience, which is just focusing our attention. This is the nature of human existence. Whatever we look at and focus our attention on, we limited our experience in that. And the mind, the brain, starts to take out all the information which we don't perceive as necessary, and particularly the information that conflicts with our sense of ourself, because otherwise we have cognitive dissonance. No, I'm not that. I'm not that. I'm not that. I'm not the kind of person that would ever do that kind of thing. And then we fall into this unfortunate case if we really fall into the delusional trap of a created identity. All morality goes out the window. If I identify myself as a particular type of person, I'm part of that group, identity politics, and something threatens that group, I perceive that as an existential threat. And therefore, as I said, morality goes out the window. I will do whatever's necessary to protect my identity and ultimately the group identity I perceive myself to be part of. Is that making some sense?
A lot of sense.
Right?
A lot of
And
sense.
that's how wars happen. You know, one day people are friends, neighbors, helping each other, chatting with each other, supporting each other, admiring each other. And the next day, because of some identity perception, they become mortal enemies. And we're in that kind of time now. This ultimate identity politics where we're becoming divided and ever more divided in smaller and smaller groups that we perceive as threats. So for me, if what I'm saying is true, and it is, all things remain in God. Everything that happens is part of the divine process. And we're all just playing our parts. We won't wake up from the dwam unless we realize how little we perceive and how polarized those perceptions are. When we recognize how we're brainwashed as part of our physiology, as all part of our neurology, and then recognize how certain cultures have recognized that and utilizes those brainwashing techniques to get people to influence people to do things that aren't really in their best interests. Their interests, the best interest of the influencer, but not in the best interest of those being influenced. When we
Wow.
recognize that technique and then focus on pattern recognition, we can use those same techniques, which are all the old ancient philosophical, theological, and and biological techniques that structures, whatever they are, in the past have done to control human behavior, and mostly on the large scale. Well, the thing is, all the spiritual traditions recognize we can take those same techniques, reverse engineer them to understand pattern recognition first. I see the pattern. I'm being hypnotized. Pattern analysis. How is the hypnotism taking place? What's being done to make me see less of reality and adopt more of a frame of reference that's not my own and not in my best interest? And then pattern utilization. How can I use that same information to hypnotize myself, to brainwash myself and hypnotize myself? So I hope that all makes sense. And then we'll try to wind up, because most of the time has just been focusing on reality, understanding reality. And I'm doing that because this recent portal, 888 portal, is not 888, it's 8888. And so when I shared the original symbol, I put the 3 8s and then an infinity sign above it to recognize the millennia. The millennia is the time that we're in, and you can't change the time. The time is what it is. You can only change the shape of your vessel, of your vehicle. And in terms of, if you think of the sea of time, the currents in the ocean and in seas, and even currents in rivers, by and large, remain the same over vast periods of time. But the winds of change, they shift all the time.
Tell me
And
this
that's
Lion's portal, does it come every year on 8th of
it
August?
comes every year on the 8th. It marks the return of Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky.
Yeah.
And that star disappears because it's out of view when the light of the sun is blocking it, so we can't see it. It's like it's under the horizon. And then it reappears every year on the 8th of August. And it's done that for a long time. And what they say is it takes the sun's energy, and magnifies it. And it's called Sirius because Sirius in ancient Greek meant scorching. It's the scorching one. And the scorching one, like that alarm which you might hear from the police car in the distance, this scorching one, its appearance heralds the scorching summer winds that are coming, that start to appear now, and they are coming. And are here in London, the temperatures are going to skyrocket again during this week, and probably be even hotter than they were in this last couple weeks, which has been hotter than I remember in London. And it's much more like it was at the same time of year when I lived in America. I was on the Chesapeake Bay. Same kind of weather as we're having now, ridiculously hot and becalmed, no wind at all. So um, just we want to be aware that this hot wind is coming, and we can catch that intensification of the sun, because it's like if the human mind can come into alignment to amplify the core, our soul intention, it it actually makes the soul intention stronger. Instead of fighting it, it raises it to a boiling point. And now, as we used to say when I was young, now you're cooking with gas. It's not, you're not cooking with a campfire. You've got concentrated uh, high energy vapor fuel. And this is what the Lion's Gate is like. And it lasts, the effect will last until the 12th. So you still have 3 days. And now I'll just quickly try to sum up those three aspects. We can have another meeting over the next one day, each day for the next 3 days, if people are interested. And you'll just need to comment in the thread whether you're interested. But the first day, this is what I call the Lion's Gate Protocol, or the Coming Forth by Day Protocol. And I developed this because I knew a lot of people who were wanting to work in prosperity consciousness, but they were also very sensitive. And so dealing with these kind of extra energies could be quite challenging. So I developed the protocol for myself, but also to share with others. And that's why I'm sharing it now with you. So the first thing you do is on the first day, which would have been yesterday, but you can still do it today. You want to enter the sacred space, what the Greeks called kairos. So the normal times we understand are chaos, completely disordered time, and chronos. This is ordered time, that things are happening sequentially, one thing after another, in the proper order. This relates to yogis' knowledge. It relates to the gurus, the 10 Sikh gurus' knowledge, which goes back to being a reiteration of Hermes Trismegistus, which is a reiteration of Tehute, the Egyptian god of wisdom, also considered Trismegistus, because it's about thought, word, and deed. It's about focus, expectation, and manifestation. That you first have to be in this state of kairos. And this is the sacred or liminal space where you're not lost in chaos. You're taking advantage of the aspect of chaos that most people ignore, which is chaos equals potential. It's not structure where the past needs to be repeated. It's structure where there's a possibility for transformation. This is the uncertain space. because chronos is ordered time, and it just means what happened before will happen again. It's certainty. So all transformational time is uncertain time, which in the Greek language we called kairos. So what we want to do is enter that space, that time, and we do it by first becoming physically very still, not moving. The Greeks used to meditate by lying down in what we've come to call corpse pose, lying down flat on the ground with your hands at your side, palms facing up. That's a beautiful way of stilling yourself. The other is obviously lotus pose or half lotus, what we can also call easy pose. But it's just becoming very still. You can even do it in a chair. But it's becoming still and then quieting, cooling the emotions. So you're avoiding elation and also anxiety or aggression. You're cooling all anger, you're cooling all anxiety, you're cooling all anticipation. You're not living in the anxiety of the past repeating. You're not living in anticipation of what's happening next. You're just present. So you become a witness. And in that, when you've stilled the body and you've cooled the emotion, ideally, imagine cooling yourself to the temperature of deep space where there's no heat at all, 271 degrees Kelvin. And then that allows that space, the coolness of outer space allows you the space to enter the space of pure potential. We then just listen, become completely pure awareness. We call this soil also. This place of Kairos is soil. We're preparing the ground of our being to accept the seed we're going to plant. And then the seed we plant is we write an invitation, an RSVP, Respondez-vous s'il vous plaît, an invitation to our future self and an invitation to the future accomplishments that we perceive, both the accomplishments or the situations or the objects we want to receive in the future. And in this case, it's the end of the year. And we're inviting our future self and those things, those entities to meet and celebrate the impossible. If your dream isn't so big that it's not scary, if it's not big enough that it's not scary, it's not a pursuit worth following. You want to listen to something so powerful that you hear it, you feel it in your heart, but it scares you. And then you need courage. Courage means core, age, time of the heart. That you need courage to follow through on that dream. You write this invitation to yourself. You then put it in an envelope. You can occasionally read it if you like to, but you want to send it out to yourself and expect the feeling whenever you think about it, to feel your future self say, yeah, I'm here, I'm waiting, come on. And you want to, the things, the entities that you're dreaming of, you want to also be aware of what you're searching for is searching for you. And when you enter that state again of meditation, of Kairos, you want to feel that thing, the other thing saying, I'm over here, come on, I'm here, come. Do what you need to do to bring me to yourself. I'm here. And I can do 10 times what you can do, but you have to move also. You have to draw me to you. If you draw me to you, I will draw you to me. Is that making sense that much?
Can be very frightening too.
Yes. And it wants to be frightening. It wants to be frightening. Look, this game isn't worth playing if it isn't a little scary. That's the truth. It's like a roller coaster. And why do we go on roller coasters? Because we love the elation of the scary aspect of it, but we also like the fact that we're sitting with seat belts in a bar in front of us, so we know we're not going to fall out. This is creating your own roller coaster ride. And it's great. It's great. And I can attest to that. I mean, the game was created in this process. I had the calling to do it for someone, well, even more than one person, but specifically recent someone, and that's been a roller coaster. It's like the game came to me. The second protocol day is you want to live a whole day, and we can talk about that tomorrow if people want to. You want to live a whole day, but focusing yourself on that experience as though it's already happening. And you make every choice that day based on you're already the person. You've become the person that could make that thing happen. Because the only reason it hasn't happened yet is because you're not the person who could do it. This is about you transforming yourself. The universe doesn't give you what you want. The universe doesn't give you what you ask for. The universe reflects back to you who you are. And when you become the person that can do these things, they will just happen. They will come to you. And they are, if you can dream it, God wouldn't let that dream reach you if you didn't have the potential to realize it. Whatever you can dream, begin it, because boldness has a power and a magic in it. The power is the logical self. The magic is the magical self. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. But you have to live a day where the choices you make are based on you're already that person. Okay, you're going to spend more on lunch, taking out somebody to lunch than you feel okay about because you're living like the person who's exists 6 months, 5 months from now. You're going to decide to do something where you're not going to do something that doesn't serve your future self in order to do the thing that does serve your future self. You're becoming the valet to your own future. And then the third day, and you do that all day long, so it doesn't interrupt your day. You can do whatever you're doing. You just look at life differently. And then the third day, you cannot change your identity unless you bury the one you have now. You have to literally, consciously let go of who you believe you are, or subconsciously, below the surface, you will undermine everything you're trying to do. You will self-sabotage because your subconscious is viewing the very things you're doing as an existential threat. So the third day, you watch yourself doing the same thing as you did yesterday, which would be tomorrow in this case. You're looking to, again, witness. You're not forcing yourself to be the future tense. You're witnessing those cognitive dissonances where you feel uncomfortable. And part of your saying yourself, you hear saying, oh, stop kidding yourself. You can't do that. Or that's not me. That can't happen. And every time you recognize this instinctual resistance, you write it down on a piece of paper. You will have the resistance the day before, but your future, when you're living your future self, you'll be so concentrated on that, you won't be focusing on the negative aspects. You're doing anything but The last day, you focus on all the negative aspects whenever you feel resistance, because you have to abandon that resistance. So that the end of the day, the very last thing you're going to do is you're going to do a funeral for yourself. Now, if you already started the process, this would be on the fourth day. For us who are just starting today, that will be on the fourth day, but that'll be the third day of what you're doing now. So another 2 days from now, you've written down your list. You've revised it. You've crystallized it. These are the things that I believe about myself that I have to consciously let go of. Yes? And I'm going to consciously let go of them. And then you're going to burn that piece of paper. You're going to hold a cremation of your former self. Say goodbye to it. Thank you for getting you this far. Be grateful, but let it go. I hope that has all made sense. And as I said, if you're interested, we could do over the next couple days. We could focus on the living the future self one day, and we can focus on the letting go of the past self the next day. And I'll wait to
I'll
hear
be
from your feedback
I'll be
in.
very, very keen, depending on Sue, whether she can make the adjustment for another class.
Yeah, and I understand whether we can do it or not. So I'll leave that to you all. Um, but I can also, if that can't happen, I can also make a recording and just drop it into the thread.
Yeah. Can I share
Yeah.
something with you?
Yes,
Something
sir.
very interesting. I was talking to a guy in the 1980s. What happened? He had to go into the jungle, and this was in the Cameron Highlands because he had to do some survey. So when
Uh
they
huh.
sent the people in, uh, nobody want to go in, because you have to go in for about 20 days. And this
Yes.
guy was a Sikh. He had to lead about 6, 7 people. Then when
Right.
you're in the jungle, one of the things he says that happens, your body becomes so sensitive. You are hearing, you are seeing the spirits. And he said, example, when you walk in a space, sometimes when you see rotting smell, and straight away
Yes.
you will know there's tigers there, because tigers, when they kill, they say they don't eat the meat fresh, they let it rot,
Yeah,
then they
they let
eat.
it cure. We
And
human beings will hang up pheasants to cure them. Exactly.
yeah,
Yes.
and then what happens? He says he had to do one thing. When he gets up in the morning, he told the guys, "Don't disturb me. I'm only doing the Mool Mantar." And wherever he goes, the Mool Mantar, he says his body became so sensitive. And over that 9 months period, he said a complete transformation. He was no more the old man because the situation forced him to change.
Exactly. And this is like the example in the group where the man was reading from the guru and
Yeah.
his house was burning down, but he just put up his hand and kept reading, and the fire never touched the guru. And obviously many didn't touch him. There is magic, absolute magic in this. And
But he said
that's what we're. Hmm?
it was frightening. He said very frightening, but he says somehow or other it was the Mool Mantar. He says all the
Yes.
senses become so activated. He says spirits come, they talk. And he said
No,
he's not the
absolutely.
only one.
Absolutely. We're seeing a tiny fraction of reality. And when we understand that, because we're in this rather egoic um, state of hubris where we think we're so much more than we are. But in fact, we're a tiny fraction of our potential, a tiny fraction. And of course, it's frightening because when we start to open our perception to, to all that is there, we start to open our perception to realize, oh my goodness, we're not alone. There's a
Yeah.
lot of things we don't know, we don't understand, and we're sharing that space. And of course, that's frightening. But this things like the Mole Mantra, this is very, very intelligently designed filtering of consciousness to focus in and ask for protection and guidance by the field. And the field wants to do that. We're part of the field, and the field wants all of it to blossom, to become more of itself. So when we know how to request, to put a heartfelt request into our full spectrum reality, our full spectrum consciousness, miracles happen. Absolute miracles happen. But it's scary, absolutely scary.
Wow, this is one of the best classes, man. Thank you for sharing this.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
been my pleasure, my absolute pleasure. And maybe Sue, if we can talk tomorrow in the morning, or when you're morning and my night, we can see
No,
whether we get.
no, is it your night? You are like in the.
No. For me, it's midday.
Okay,
But I'm saying,
so we talk tomorrow at the same time?
yeah. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying if you and I need to talk about that, then you could call me when you're up in the morning.
Oh,
Or if we can arrange it now, then yes, we'll do it at the same time tomorrow.
okay.
Well,
We'll do that.
since it's my session tomorrow, I
Yep.
think
Yeah.
I think we'll let we go ahead with what Data wants to do.
Yes.
Okay, bless you. This is
Okay,
really
all right.
important. And as I said, this is opening this opportunity, this window, this portal is literally opening ourselves, our consciousness up into shifting into the fourth phase of consciousness, which Guru described as in the garden of the Guru, in the garden of the court of the Guru, the rose leaves become emeralds and the rose petals become rubies. This is
Wow.
moving into a crystalline consciousness that is so much more complex and so much more multidimensional and so much more full spectrum than
Yeah,
the
indeed.
reality we're in.
And
Indeed.
it's frightening because we are outside the comfort level,
Exactly.
outside our belief system. What actually
Exactly.
happened? Our
Yeah.
belief frame. Every belief has a frame. That frames ourselves either limit us or it expands. So what
Exactly.
happens? So what we are doing is actually expanding and making our belief frame so far, so big that it encompasses the whole creation.
Exactly. And we'll come back to that on the fourth day.
Yeah.
On the 12th. We'll come back to exactly that. So I really appreciate it. And then maybe we can chat about that. But 100%, we need to change the frame. Whoever owns the frame owns the room.
And that frame is actually created by ourselves. Our real
Absolutely.
what we see is what we create ourselves. So here,
so this is the point worth mentioning.
yeah,
The frame we create or we impose on ourselves because
Right.
somebody else created a stronger frame which we submitted to.
Right.
Mm.
And this is all
And
about everything that Guru Nanak taught, and all after that was, how do you create the frame? How
yeah,
do you become a full spectrum human, light mind being, so that you're always the one setting the frame?
yep. And actually,
Okay.
I did a training whereby I bring in the whole organization and ending it with a funeral because
Oh, brilliant. Yeah,
you're
yeah.
you're letting go of your old self, and then during the funeral you didn't you speak about your past, and you welcome the new.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's just like I created actually a real funeral.
Well, that's something
Okay.
that we'll talk about, because this process that we're beginning is really the coming forth by day. Is we're setting up a daily practice, but it's the first of 5 steps we'll take between now and the end of the year.
Yep.
And one of those steps is exactly that.
Yeah.
We're creating our own funeral. We're writing our own obituary, and we're writing our own eulogy, and we're also writing our own will. What we're
Mm.
going to leave behind us, our legacy, but we're writing it not from our perspective now, but our perspective that we know we will grow into before we go.
Yep. Okay. We.
Okay.
All right.
Bless you, bless you, bless you. You all are
Bless you too.
wonderful,
Good
and